The clock on the far wall of the operating suite read 1:47 in the morning, though time had long stopped meaning anything to Dr. Lorne Whitaker. He stood at the scrub sink outside OR3, running cold water over his hands long after the ritual required. The hallway behind him was empty. The night shift at Meridian Medical Center moved differently than the day, slower, quieter, stripped of its performance. No administrators walking briskly in expensive shoes. No pharmaceutical representatives with laminated name badges and practiced smiles. Just the low hum of the ventilation system and the occasional squeak of a gurney wheel somewhere down the corridor. Lorne dried his hands. He walked back to his office on the 4th floor without turning on the overhead light. He sat behind his desk in the dark and opened his laptop, the blue-white glow the only illumination in the room. Outside the single window, the city was awash of amber streetlights, and the slow crawl of a few late trucks on the avenue below. He had 3 unread emails from the hospital board. He did not open them. As chief of cardiovascular surgery at one of the most prestigious private medical centers in the country, Lorne Whitaker had spent the last 11 years building a reputation that other surgeons spent entire careers chasing. 37 years old, and already the name most referring physicians put at the top of their list for anything complex, anything dangerous, anything the other guys said they could not touch. The board loved him for it. The press had written 3 profiles on him in the last 2 years. A surgical techniques journal had run a cover story on a procedure he had modified and published. None of it kept him company at 2 in the morning. His phone sat on the desk beside the keyboard. It lit up. 1 buzz, then a second, almost immediate. "Did you eat anything after the surgery tonight?" Then, "I saw the OR board. You were in there for 6 hours. Please tell me someone brought you something." Lorne stared at the screen without touching it. He knew this number. It had appeared 3 times in the last week, always late. Always unprompted, always with the specific low-frequency concern of someone who understood the rhythms of this building. He had assumed it was a colleague, maybe one of the third-year residents who occasionally left granola bars outside his office like offerings to a difficult deity. He had not responded to any of the previous messages. He did not respond now. He turned the phone face down on the desk and went back to the blank email draft he had been staring at for 40 minutes. 2 minutes passed. The phone buzzed a 3rd time. He ignored it. 4 minutes after that, it buzzed again. He reached out with the intention of silencing the device entirely and leaving it in his desk drawer until morning rounds. But his thumb caught the edge of the screen, and the message was already open before he could stop himself. "You take your coffee black, no sugar, and you stop drinking it after 4 in the afternoon, because otherwise you are awake until 3. Which means right now you are running on nothing but whatever you had at lunch, assuming you actually stopped for lunch. There is a vending machine on the 2nd floor near the east stairwell. The code for the staff discount is 4471. The turkey sandwich is the only thing worth eating. I am just saying." Lorne did not move. He read it a second. He looked up at the wall as if the answer to his confusion might be projected there. Then he looked back at the screen. He was not a man given to unease. In the operating room, the thing his residents talked about most was the stillness he maintained under pressure, the way his hands never changed tempo no matter what the monitor said. But reading those words in the dark of his empty office, Lorne Whitaker felt something he had not felt in a long time. He felt seen by someone he could not identify, and he did not know what to do with that. He knew his own coffee habits. His team knew them. But the 4 p.m. cutoff was not something he had ever said out loud to anyone. He had simply lived it. Quietly, for years, the way you live with private rules you set for yourself and never explain. His throat was dry. He realized with a faint and uncomfortable clarity that he was also hungry. He did not reply to the message. But he did go down to the 2nd floor. He stood in front of the vending machine for a moment, then typed in 4471. He pressed the code for the turkey sandwich. He ate it standing in the stairwell. Jess Darrow had been working nights at Meridian for almost 8 months. Her official title was Patient Transport and Environmental Services, which was a long way of. She moved patients between floors on a gurney, cleaned rooms after discharge, and restocked supply carts when the day crew left things undone. She was 28 years old. She had a community college certificate in medical administration that she had finished entirely online, studying on her phone during breaks, and on the 40-minute bus ride home after her shift ended at 6 in the morning. She had taken the night position because the differential pay was better, and because her younger brother Theo was on a waiting list for a hearing specialist who did not accept their insurance plan. Every dollar of the differential went into a separate account she did not let herself spend from. She had noticed Dr. Whitaker the same way you notice a weather system, not because it announces itself, but because everything in its vicinity adjusts slightly without knowing why. The floor quieted when he walked through. The nurses moved with more precision. Even the attending physician straightened almost imperceptibly. She had also noticed that he almost never ate. She had been cleaning the break room on 4 one evening, when she overheard one of the senior nurses telling an intern, "He takes his coffee black, never after 4. And he will not eat anything the cafeteria makes because he once found a hair in the soup in 2019, and he has never emotionally recovered." The nurse had said it as a joke. Jess had filed it as information. She was not trying to get his attention. She had saved his number from a discharge notifications she had accidentally received a week ago. A clerical routing error that had sent his personal callback number to her work phone, and she had told herself 3 times to delete it. She had not deleted it. She had not expected the messages to go anywhere. She was not naive. She knew exactly what Dr. Lorne Whitaker was and what she was, and the distance between those two things was not the kind that closed through text messages. But she had seen him come out of that 6-hour surgery and go straight back upstairs without stopping, without eating, without so much as sitting down for 10 minutes, and something in her chest had done a thing she could not entirely explain. So she sent the message. And then the second one. And then, because she had apparently lost her mind somewhere around the 3rd-floor supply closet. The third one with the vending machine code. She was pushing an empty gurney back toward the elevator bank when her phone buzzed. She stopped. A single message from his number. "How do you know what time I stopped drinking coffee?" Jess stood very still in the middle of the hallway. She read the message twice. Then she typed back, "Overheard it. Night shift knows everything. We are basically invisible, which means we hear everything people say when they think no one is listening." She pressed send. She stared at the screen for 30 seconds. He did not reply. She put her phone away and went back to work. 3 days later, Jess was wiping down the counter in the 4th-floor family waiting area when Dr. Lorne Whitaker walked in. She did not look up immediately. She registered shoes first, expensive, worn. The kind of shoes a person buys when they finally earn real money and then forgets to replace for 5 years because they never think about anything except work. Then she looked up. He was looking at her, not in the way that people usually looked at Jess, which was mostly just through her, or past her, or at the cart she was pushing. He was looking at her the way you look at something you are trying to place. "You work nights," he said. It was not a question. Jess straightened. "Yes. You know the vending machine code. Everyone on nights knows the vending machine code." He nodded slowly. He looked tired in the specific way of someone who had been tired for so long that the tiredness had become structural, built into the lines around his eyes and the set of his jaw. "Did you eat the sandwich yourself first to make sure it was edible?" Something shifted in Jess's chest. She kept her expression neutral. "I have eaten approximately 40 of those sandwiches. They are not good. But they are food, and food is food at 2 in the morning." Lorne Whitaker looked at her for another moment. Then he nodded again, very slightly, and walked back down the hallway without another word. Jess turned back to the counter. She pressed her palm flat against the cool surface for a moment and took a slow breath. That night, around 1:15, her phone buzzed. "I am told the soup here caused a diplomatic incident in 2019. Are the vending machine sandwiches truly the only option?" She smiled so hard her face hurt. "There is a diner 4 blocks east called Palmetto's. They do a 24-hour delivery. The chicken and rice is the only thing they do correctly. But they do it correctly. Tell them Dr. Do from Meridian and they add extra broth. I do not know why this works. It has always worked." A pause. Then, "How do you know that?" "Because some of us have been ordering from Palmetto's for our 30-minute break for 8 months. Night shift, Dr. Whitaker. We are everywhere." This time, there was a longer pause. Then, "Noted. Thank you, Jess." She stared at her name on the screen for a moment. She had not told him her name. He had found it somewhere. She did not entirely know what to do with the quiet warmth that moved through her chest at the realization that he had looked. She went back to work. She did not let herself think about it too much. She was 28 years old with a community college certificate and a stack of her brother's unpaid medical bills in a folder on her kitchen table. Dr. Lorne Whitaker was the kind of person whose name was printed in journals. These were two different categories of existence. She understood that perfectly. Understanding something she was learning did not necessarily stop it from mattering. The incident happened on a Tuesday. The main corridor on the ground floor connected the hospital's public entrance to the elevator banks, and during peak visitor hours, it became genuinely crowded. Family members in street clothes mixing with staff in scrubs, the flow always slightly too fast for the space. Jess was navigating a supply cart through the congestion when a man in a charcoal blazer walked directly into her path without looking up from his phone. The cart stopped. He looked up. His eyes moved from the cart to Jess with the particular expression of a man who had never once in his life considered that he might be the one who needed to move. "Watch where you are going," he said. "I apologize," Jess said evenly. "I will go around." She began to redirect the cart. The man stepped sideways and blocked her again, seemingly without fully registering that he was doing it, which was almost worse than if he had been deliberate. "This corridor is a disaster," he said loudly, to no one in particular. "These carts should not be allowed during visiting hours. Someone needs to talk to administration." He looked at Jess directly. "Who is your supervisor?" "I can give you the number for patient services," Jess said. Her voice did not change. She had a system for this. "You found the quietest version of yourself, and you stayed there. Because this job paid for Theo's appointments, and that mattered more than anything this man could say to her in a hospital corridor." "Your name," the man said. "I want your name, Jess Darrow, and you work here doing what, exactly?" His tone had a particular texture to it, the specific contempt of someone who sorts people by category and has already sorted her. "Environmental services," she said. He made a sound that was not quite a laugh. He turned to the woman beside him and said something Jess did not quite catch, but the word "these people" was in it clearly enough. Jess gripped the handle of the cart. She thought about Theo. She thought about the folder on the kitchen table. She thought about the number in her savings account that was $40 short of the threshold she had set for herself. She did not say anything else. She redirected the cart. "Excuse me." The voice came from behind her. Quiet, but the kind of quiet that has absolute confidence behind it. The kind that does not need volume because it has never once had to compete. The man in the charcoal blazer turned. His expression shifted in the specific way of someone who has just recognized that the calculation of a situation has changed entirely. Dr. Lorne Whitaker stood in the corridor. He was in his white coat, his ID badge clipped at the chest. He was not looking at the man. He was looking at Jess, a brief, assessing look, the same way he looked at a patient chart, gathering information first. Then he turned to the man. "This is a working hospital," Lorne said. His voice was completely level. "The staff navigating supply carts through this corridor are doing so because patients in this building need those supplies. They are not obstructions. They are the reason this building functions." He paused. "You spoke to this staff member with contempt in front of a public corridor in a facility where I serve on the clinical leadership board. That is not something I am willing to overlook." The man opened his mouth. Lorne continued before he could produce a sound. "There are 4 security cameras covering this section of corridor. The audio capture on the newer units is quite good. I would be happy to involve the patient relations director, who reports directly to administration, and we can review the recording together." He waited exactly 1 beat. "Or you can simply behave like an adult and move through the corridor without speaking to staff members that way again." The man looked at Lorne. He looked at Jess. He said nothing else. He turned and walked toward the elevator bank, the woman beside him following without making eye contact. The corridor returned to its normal noise. Lorne turned to Jess. "Are you all right?" he asked. Jess had her hands wrapped around the cart handle. She realized she had been holding her breath for approximately the last 45 seconds. She let it out slowly. "I am fine," she said. "Thank you. You did not have to do that." "I know I did not have to," Lorne said. He looked at her with that same steady assessment. "That is not why I did it." Jess did not know what to say to that. She was not by nature a person who was easily undone. She had been working since she was 17. She had been the responsible one for longer than that. She was not going to fall apart in a hospital corridor because a surgeon had defended her to a rude man in a blazer, but something behind her sternum did something she could not fully account for. "I need to finish the cart run," she said. "Of course," Lorne said. She walked away from him. She kept the pace professional and even. She waited until she was around the corner. And in the elevator and the doors had fully closed before she pressed her back against the wall and allowed herself one single, quiet exhale that lasted about 4 seconds longer than normal breathing. After that, the messages stopped. Not because either of them decided to stop, but because after you have been seen in a particular way by a particular person, the small, comfortable anonymity of a text thread feels different. Jess found herself holding her phone for longer before typing and then putting it down without sending. She told herself she was being sensible. She told herself she knew what she was. Lorne, for his part, found the absence louder than he had expected. He was in a board meeting on a Thursday afternoon. Third one that week. Sitting at the long table, with the kind of attention he had trained himself to project even when he was not fully present. When he realized he had checked his phone 3 times in 40 minutes. This was not something he did. He did not check his phone during meetings. He had been known to leave his phone in his office entirely on days when the caseload allowed it. He put the phone face down on the table and made himself attend to the budget discussion. He checked it again 6 minutes later. That evening he sat in his office after rounds were finished and everyone else had gone home. He was not looking at anything in particular. He was thinking about a woman who knew which vending machine code gave the staff discount, and who had looked him directly in the eye in a hospital corridor and said, "I am fine," in a voice that was composed and certain, and did not ask him for anything at all. Most people asked him for things. They did not always do it overtly. Sometimes it was just the particular way they directed a conversation, the angling toward a request that was coming eventually. He had spent a decade calibrating the distance between himself and other people, because proximity, in his experience, was almost always transactional. Jess Darrow had told him where to get a decent meal at 2 in the morning and had not wanted anything back. He picked up his phone. He had not sent a personal message to anyone's personal number in. He thought about it and genuinely could not remember the last time. He typed, "The chicken and rice from Palmetto's was exactly what you said it would be." The extra broth was real. He pressed send before he could decide not to. The response came 4 minutes later. "I told you. Also, I am choosing to believe that you actually stopped working long enough to eat it properly and did not just stand over your desk with a plastic fork." He smiled. He was sitting alone in a dark office at 8:30 on a Thursday night, and he was smiling at his phone. "I sat down," he typed back. "I used a real fork. I ate approximately 70% of it before a resident knocked on the door. 70% is passing. I will take it." He sat there for a moment after the message came through. Then he typed, "Why did you stop messaging?" A longer pause this time. Long enough that he thought she was not going to answer. Then, "I know what I am, Dr. Whitaker, and I know what you are." I did not want to make something awkward that did not need to be awkward. He read that twice. "What you are," she had written, as if it were a fixed measurement. As if the distance between them were a physical property of the world rather than a series of choices. He typed back, "I think you have a very clear idea of what I am. I am less certain that the idea is accurate." No response for several minutes. Then, "Good night, Dr. Whitaker." He sat with that for a while. "Good night, Jess." It was a Wednesday night, close to 2 in the morning, when Jess's phone rang. Not a message. A call. An actual phone call, which almost no one made to anyone anymore, and which meant something specific. The number on the screen was not Lorne's. It was Theo's group home. She answered immediately. She was in the supply room on the 3rd floor. She sat down on an upturned crate among the linen shelves and listened. Theo had been taken by ambulance to the emergency department 40 minutes ago. Severe inner ear episode, possible rupture, the kind of thing that had been building for months while they waited for the specialist who did not take their insurance. He was stable. He was scared. He was asking for her. Jess ended the call. She sat very still for approximately 30 seconds. Then she got up, found her charge supervisor, explained in as few words as possible, clocked out, and walked toward the elevator. She had to pass through the main corridor to reach the emergency entrance. She was already moving with her coat half on when she heard her name. Lorne was standing outside the cardiac unit doorway, a chart in his hand. He looked at her face and the chart went down. "What happened?" he said. It was not a question. She told him. She heard herself doing it. Efficient. Just the facts. Theo, the ambulance, the specialist they still had not seen, and she was not going to cry in the middle of the corridor. She was not built for that. But her voice lost one of its layers somewhere in the middle of the sentence, and she could hear it happen. Lorne said nothing for a moment. Then, "Which ID this building?" "Yes, come on," he said. He fell into step beside her without ceremony. without asking whether she wanted him to, without doing anything, except simply walking with her toward the elevator, as if the question of whether he would be there had never been a question at all. In the emergency department, the attending on Theo's case did a slight recalibration the moment Lorne Whitaker appeared. Not performance, just the quiet reality of how a system responds to a known quantity. Theo was a 24-year-old man with his sister's same careful eyes and a hearing aid in his left ear. He was lying on a gurney with the particular stillness of someone who has been frightened and is working hard not to show it. Jess sat beside him and held his hand with both of hers. Lorne spoke to the attending quietly. He reviewed the imaging. He made 2 phone calls. At 3:40 in the morning, he came back and sat in one of the hard plastic chairs across from Jess and told her that the specialist she had been trying to get Theo in front of for 7 months happened to be a colleague of his, that the man owed him approximately 3 favors, that he had called in one of them tonight. Jess looked at him. "You did not have to do that," she said. "You keep saying that to me," Lorne replied, "because it keeps being true." Lorne was quiet for a moment. He was looking at her in the way that had become familiar, the gathering look, the assessment. "Is he the reason you work nights?" he asked. "The differential pay," she said. "Yes." He nodded. He did not say anything else about it. He did not say what she had spent years bracing herself for people to say, which was some variation of, "Isn't there anyone else who can help, or have you looked into assistance programs?" As if she had not already read every form and called every number in a 2-county radius. He just sat there, in a plastic chair in an emergency department waiting area, a man whose name was in journals, and said nothing except what was necessary. After a while, Theo fell asleep. Jess looked at Lorne across the narrow aisle of the waiting area. In the flat fluorescent light of the ED, with his coat off and the sleeves of his dress shirt rolled to the elbow, he looked less like the version of himself she usually saw. The composed, immaculate force field walking through the hospital like its own weather system. He looked tired. He looked like a person. "You should go," she said. "You have rounds at 7. "I know what time I have rounds," he said. "Then go." He looked at her steadily. "I will go when you tell me there is someone else coming to sit with you." Jess opened her mouth and closed it again. There was no one else coming. There had not been someone else coming for a long time. But she was not going to say that out loud in a hospital waiting room at 4 in the morning. She did not have to. He already knew. She could see it in his expression. Not pity, which she would not have been able to bear, but something older and more honest than that, recognition. "Lorne," she said. She had not used his first name before. It came out without her deciding to. "Thank you." He was quiet for a moment. "You have been taking care of everyone in this building for 8 months, he said. "In your own way, you can let someone sit with you." She did not have an answer for that. She turned and looked at the doorway to Theo's room. Through the small window she could see her brother sleeping, his face finally relaxed, one hand open on the blanket. She did not say anything else. After a while, Lorne got up and brought 2 cups of coffee from the waiting room machine. Bad coffee. The kind that no one would ever brag about. The kind that tastes like a building is trying, and put one in front of her. He sat back down. They sat there in the fluorescent quiet, not talking much, until the pale gray light of early morning started showing through the narrow window near the ceiling. A week passed. Then 2. Theo saw the specialist. The word correctable was used. Jess sat in her apartment that night and stared at the ceiling for a long time. She and Lorne kept texting. Carefully now, both of them, as if they were each aware of a thing that had not been named and were not sure what naming it would do. He told her about a difficult case without giving her identifiable details. She told him that the East Corridor vending machine had been restocked and now had real peanut butter crackers, which was a triumph she felt he deserved to know about. They kept the register light. They kept it surface. Beneath the surface, she thought about him constantly, which she did not allow herself to say. Below his measured, careful messages, Lorne was aware of something that he had spent a very long time training himself not to be: distracted. He was distracted during rounds. He was distracted during the board meeting. He was distracted at 6 in the morning when the overnight cases were being handed off, standing at the nursing station, looking at a chart while his mind was 4 floors away. He had built his entire professional life on not being distracted. He had built his entire adult life, if he was being accurate about it, on control, on the carefully maintained conviction that closeness was a variable you could manage if you were disciplined enough. He had never met anyone who made him feel that the discipline was beside the point. On a Friday evening, he stopped Jess in the corridor on 3. He did not plan to. He had been walking somewhere else entirely. But she came around the corner with a linen cart, and they nearly ran into each other, and he said her name, and she stopped, and they both stood there for a second. "I owe you something," he said. She tilted her head slightly. "You do not owe me anything." "I found the Palmetto's delivery order that has been going to my account for 4 months," he said. "You have been paying the difference on the staff discount because they stopped honoring it last December." Jess did not say anything. She had not planned for him to notice that. "You were covering the difference out of your own money," he said. "It is $3. Every time. $3, she repeated. "Do not make it a thing." Lorne looked at her for a long moment. "I want to take you to dinner," he said. "Not a thank you. Not a professional courtesy." Dinner. The corridor was empty. A cartwheel somewhere down the hall made a slow, rhythmic squeak as it rolled away. Jess looked at him. She thought about the folder on her kitchen table, and the bus ride home, and the community college certificate. She thought about all the categories she had always understood herself to belong to, and the categories she understood him to occupy, and the considerable distance that had always existed between them as a geographical fact. "I know what you are going to say," he said. "You do not," she said. "You are going to tell me you know what you are, and you know what I am, and that the space between those two things is too significant to—" "I was going to say yes," she said. He stopped. He looked at her. Something shifted behind his eyes, the composed surface of him opening slightly, just briefly, the way a window opens in a room that has been shut for a long time and lets in air. "Okay," he said. "Okay," she said. They went on a Saturday, not somewhere with a waiting list and a dress code, and a sommelier who hovered. He asked her where she wanted to go genuinely, and she said Palmetto's because she had been ordering from them for 8 months and had never actually eaten there, and he said that seemed right. They sat in a booth in the back. The chicken and rice was exactly what it should be. The broth was good. They talked for 3 hours without planning to. She told him about Theo. He told her, with the specific care of someone releasing something slowly, about the years after medical school. The debt, the grinding rotations, the gap between the version of medicine he had gone in wanting to do and the version that the system rewarded. He had not talked about those years to anyone. He was not sure now why he had kept them so contained. Jess listened the way she did everything, with complete attention and without performance. At the end of the evening, standing on the sidewalk outside, the city doing its ordinary late Saturday thing around them, he reached into the pocket of his jacket and brought out something small. He held it out to her. It was a receipt, crumpled, softened at the fold lines. She recognized the Palmetto's letterhead. Her eyes moved to the date. 8 months ago, one of her first orders when she had just started nights. "Your phone number was on the delivery contact field," he said. "You left it when you used the hospital account to place the order that first week. I saved it before the system cleared the record." He paused. "I want you to know that. I did not find it by accident." Jess held the receipt. The paper was soft from being carried. "You kept this," she said. "I kept it." She looked up at him. All the careful distance she had constructed, the sensible arithmetic of their different categories, the reasonable protection of knowing exactly what she was and what he was, it did not dissolve. It simply became, in that moment, irrelevant. What was left, underneath all of it, was just this. A man who had kept a crumpled receipt, and a woman who had memorized a vending machine code, 2 people who had found each other in the 4 a.m. corridors of a building dedicated to keeping people alive, and had, without quite meaning to, done the same thing for each other. She handed the receipt back to him. "Hold on to it," she said. He put it back in his pocket. They stood on the sidewalk a little longer than necessary, and then they walked, and the city moved around them the way cities do, indifferent and continuous and entirely unaware that somewhere in its noise, something quiet had begun.